good. It's all good. Living, loving, living, it's all good. I'm loving, living, it's all good. Living, living, it's all good. I'm loving, living, it's all good.
Welcome to It's All Good. My name is Adam Cox. Some of you know me on the radio as Lucas on the B98 Morning Show. I'm joined by my best friend and life coach, chiropractor, and everything else, Dr. Eric Lane, live from Tucson, Arizona. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's nice and warm, and there is no hurricane here.
That's a good thing. Okay, so we like to start off our podcast with something from Mr. Perfect. We all want to be perfect, but none of us are. So if you're a husband and you're watching this, you can learn a lot from Mr. Perfect. Let's hear.
We'll see what Mr. Perfect has to tell us today.
Long day, hun? Let me give you a back rub.
Okay, I'm going to give it a couple because I want to see if you've done any of these this week for Nicole.
All right.
I love doing the dishes for you.
Oh, that's a bad one.
We'll give him one more.
Schnookums, I've left you with some extra cash to go shopping with the girls today.
Now, I do that. I give her cash to go shopping. I do not call her Schnookums. That's never come out of my mouth. I don't do the dishes in our house because I do the shopping and the cooking, and I do laundry. I do other things. So the dishes are offhand.
Do you guys even have any dishes because of your lifestyle?
We do a lot of paper plates and paper cups, except for Thanksgiving. All right, so let's talk a little bit about last time we talked, we were talking about smiling, how positive smiling is. You know what I noticed this week? A lot of times I didn't engage the smile. Somebody engaged the smile on me. I smiled back, and I got that happy feeling. So I know that what you were talking about really works. Even though that I didn't, it started. It feels good to smile. I don't know if you did the same thing this week or not.
I had a lot of smiling people. Last weekend I was at a seminar, and we were at a leadership speaking seminar, and so the general vibe of the seminar was extremely positive. What I did notice, though, is that if you've ever been to a seminar, in the beginning of a seminar, you will see that I think people, even in their best intentions, are measuring each other up. You're sort of looking around, and you're trying to see, I wonder how well he does, or I wonder
who's
how well
he, right, yeah.
And so we sort of have our guard upon us, and it's interesting at the end of time, you spend 2 days with people. Those have come down, and there's an ability to communicate, and the genuine smile and the genuine person comes out, and it's a really interesting thing because you're not concerned anymore about what they do, how much they make, all of the other things. And this particular seminar, they said to come and dress in casual clothing. And if you've been to a lot of seminars, sometimes you can look and see how people do because they're wearing an Armani suit, they have cufflinks, and so automatically the hierarchy begins. When you go to a seminar where everybody is dressed the same in sweats or casual, you think you're speaking to a guy that is the janitor at the local library, and you find out 2 days later he's the vice president of Briggs & Stratton because
right.
We don't put those assumptions, and that's sort of the way that we want to interact with people on a daily basis because we tend to measure people up. It's like green light, red light, green light, and it changes the way we approach them. It changes the way that we are confident or non-confident. Just like when I met you that first time, I knew you were a big shot radio guy, and I wasn't going to talk to you, and I didn't want to listen to you, and I was just acting uninterested because of that ego thing that we have sometimes. So I've learned a lot over the years. I don't do that as much anymore.
Yeah, you've changed so much. We met in 2001 or 2000 or 2001, and I can tell you how you have changed so much. It's incredible. But you're a life coach, and so that's changing as part of what you do. Okay, so real quick, you have booked a guest. We haven't had a guest yet on our podcast. So coming up on Tuesday, we're actually going to interview our first guest. We want to tell them who's coming on with us.
So we're going to have it. I don't want to introduce him this way. I'll do that on Tuesday, but most people know Famous Dave's barbecue restaurants all over the country.
Yes.
Dave's son, James Anderson, has put forth his leadership programs and speaking programs throughout the world. He's really blazed a name for himself. In fact, in the 2 days I was with him, he never once mentioned Famous Dave or his dad.
Wow.
And all of his accomplishments, I'm sure he would say how grateful he is, but he teaches people all over the world. He's also a Native American, and he's done tremendous amounts of good for the Native Americans throughout the entire country. He's met with many of the leaders. He's instilled programs. He runs marathons for charity, usually for the Native Americans. He's just an incredible dynamic speaker, and so it'll be great. We'll have some good questions, and it's something everybody should listen to. You'll learn a ton from James.
Is it open forum? Can I ask any questions? Because, I'm a radio host. I like to ask obscure questions. Is that okay?
You can ask him, and you can ask him if he's also an elevator survivor.
Oh, yeah. I want to talk about that. But before we get to your story, so at the beginning of our podcast, I like to be able to ask Dr. Eric certain things. You guys can ask. You can send us an email or a question on our Facebook page or whatever. So 2 years ago, I tore my calf playing basketball. I was told by my doctor that I had to go to a physical therapist to get it worked on. So I went to a physical therapist. My first visit to the physical therapist, he did something with some kind of a tool on my calf. It hurt so bad that I literally started crying. I didn't want him to see that I was crying. I had to turn my head, and he said, "You need to come back 3 times a week for 5 weeks to make sure we get all the scar tissue out of there, or it's never going to heal." Well, after the first time that I went, I never went back. And so I figured I'm just going to do this on my own. So I strengthened my calf. I stretched it. 2 years goes by. I'm playing basketball last week, and I'm jumping up and down for a rebound. I keep missing the shot and jumping back. And then I hear my calf, the same exact spot, pop again. So I know that I tore it. So the question is, how do because I've been going to the hot tub and putting a jet on there but it doesn't hurt as bad as it did when I went to the physical therapist. How do I do what the physical therapist did without going to the physical therapist? How do I reattach or how does that work with the calf muscle?
Well, the first time you tore your calf, you were carrying around probably a 6th grade boy all the time on your stomach. So there is a reason.
You're saying that I was 40 pounds overweight? Is that what you're saying?
So you did a tremendous amount to get leaner and to be lighter.
Hold on. Let me see if I'm getting leaner. Let me see. Yeah, it's still working. I weighed in at 187 this morning. I was 232 when you started my program. So I've lost over 50 pounds with you.
You've done well, and that's been a huge component. But the biggest challenge we have when we tear muscles or soft tissue, because this could include tendon and it could also include ligaments. Tendons and ligaments do not have the ability to creep back to their normal length. So a lot of times, once we have ligament and tendon damage, sometimes it's very difficult to have that stretching ability. But in the calf, most of it we're dealing with is muscle fibers. Yours and all of our muscle fibers run in one direction. So the length of the muscle is the way that they run. So when I contract my bicep, all of those muscles squeeze together, contract, and cause my hand to come towards my shoulder. When we tear muscles, there are certain cells that go to work called fibroblasts. Fibroblast jobs are to lay down fibrous tissue or scar tissue. Scar tissue does not necessarily line up parallel to those fibers that were torn. So it will cross fiber. You'll get some fibers going horizontal, some vertical, some transverse and diagonal. And their job is just to heal the wound. If we're not constantly breaking down those adhesions that are not forming along the lines that the muscle fibers should go, we're going to continually re-aggravate and tear it. And even at best case scenario, if it heals perfectly, it's still weaker, it's still more pain sensitive, and it's more prone to injury. And the easiest way to think of this is if you've ever cut the corner of your mouth.
Yes.
And you go a couple weeks and you forget about it, and then you take a big bite of something and you just rip it right open again because it did not build up the ability to have the same flexibility. So what the physical therapist was probably doing was getting in there with instruments, possibly. We call it instrument-assisted soft tissue mobilization.
Yes,
and
that's exactly what he used.
On cross-fiber adhesions, trying to allow those fibers to line up properly. So you can do that. It's really hard on the calf, but that's why we use different types of mobility devices like lacrosse balls. There's a ton of tools out there to allow that area to heal. And during the time of healing, you want to run it through range of motion, but not explosive range of motion, because if you go to jump and create a tremendous amount of force, it'll tear again.
So I've been in the pool, just jumping in the pool, bouncing on the pool. I've been trying to work my calf, but is there something about the scar tissue? How do I get out of the scar tissue, come out, or does it just rebuild and the scar tissue goes away?
If you're not breaking it down physically, it's going to just form in those different configurations. So you're going to be much more prone to tearing. You're already prone to tearing that muscle again, much greater than the other side. If you've ever sprained an ankle badly,
yes,
it's the ankle that gets sprained the rest of your life over and over and over again.
Yes.
And unless you're a professional athlete who's paid millions, and if you watch a professional athlete rehab, it's a 4 to 8 hour a day thing where they have trainers with them, constantly going through ranges of motion and exercise. That's why most surgeries in the United States, yes, we get out of pain, but we don't restore motion nearly like we could because nobody does the therapy. They get 6 to 8 weeks of 30 minutes of therapy, but they really need to be an hour to 2 a day of really taking that joint through its range of motion and breaking down scar tissue.
So you're telling me that I need to be a millionaire and then hire a personal therapist to make sure my calf heals properly.
And you just have to spend time, 15 to 20 minutes a day at night, just breaking it down.
Okay.
There's tools.
That's what I'll do.
Or you could use a blunt end of the butter knife with Vaseline.
Can I use the peanut that you gave me?
Yep, you can use and you said peanut, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure.
Yeah, you gave me a peanut.
I just want to make sure I heard you right.
All right, so I want to break the week. By the way, coming up in about 5 minutes, I want to talk about some really, really good stories. And what we like to do on It's All Good is to make sure that when you turn the news on, it's depressing, there's bad things on there, that when you turn on our podcast, if It's All Good, there's some really, really touching, great stories that will help motivate you to do good things. I got those coming up here in just a minute, but I want to talk about a couple things in your life. First, I want to talk about you being a new grandparent. I know you already have 2 grandkids, but now you have a third grandkid from another child. Congratulations. I saw on Facebook, no name yet, or is there a name?
He has been named.
Oh, what's the name of the
name
baby?
Is Bankston.
Bankston?
Bankston. So it's a Swedish origin. We actually have a couple grandkids now. We have a Stenson and a Bankston that are Swedish. My wife's family name back is spelled a little differently, but his name's Bankston.
Okay. Well, congratulations on that. Here's the question I have. I've noticed in life that grandparents treat their grandchildren way different than they treat their own children. And I'm not a grandparent yet. My son's still 17. My mom and dad are 2 completely different people with the grandchildren than they were with us. What is the difference between being a grandparent and a parent? And why is it so you're so much nicer to the grandbabies than you are to your own kids?
You know, I was thinking about that driving home the other day. And it's not so much that you love them any differently. And people ask, can you love your grandkids as much as your children? I think you can, even though you're not with them. I mean, I think surely I do at this point. They become part of you. As a parent, we are responsible for, laying down the rules and being the policeman and really ensuring that everything happens. And I do believe grandparents need to be consistent with the parents in that, but I think we get a little bit more latitude. I also think that because of the time, if in our case with our little ones in Houston, I don't get to spend a lot of time with them on a day in and day out basis. If I lived next door, it might be a little bit different because you'll see grandparents that become the disciplinarian because they watch them during the day while the parents go to work. It's a different relationship, I think. But when I see those little ones, whether it's FaceTime almost daily, it's that time where I just want to get the laugh, the smile. You love them. You want your best. So it's like you're bringing your best because you don't get a lot of time. And so everything is fun. 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago in Houston, we did the aquarium. We did the zoo. I mean, in 2 days, we did so much that I even think the grandkids are like, these people are great because when they come, everything's fun.
Right.
But I think it's the situation, but they're just, it's hard to explain how incredibly great it is. And I would say that it makes it incredibly great if you have great kids because if your children are the parents that you would like them to be, and they're instilling the attributes of these children, and you watch them sing and pray and do the things and you watch how wonderful they are, that makes it even better. I think sometimes I watch grandparents in my office who are dealing with a single mother, a single father, and it's a little bit different of a transition for them because those children are struggling with identity. They're struggling with daily activities because they don't even have a stable environment in the home. Yeah. These children have a perfect environment in the home, so it's so easy just to unconditionally love them and have a good time. You're not having to worry about other things that many grandparents might have to deal with.
I've asked that question to other grandparents, and the one common response I get from all the grandparents is, well, because we get to love on them and then hand them back and get the heck out of that house. I was like, okay, well, I get it now.
The other thing I would say too, being a parent of 5, is you learn a lot from number 1 to number 5. And I do think you learn what really is important and what things you made a big deal about that were not a big deal. And so from my first to my 5th, if you could become a parent after 20 years, you would be a much better parent because you realize the time to love, the time to discipline, the time that it's just a different scenario. So I do think wisdom, that old statement that experience keeps a dear school, but fools will learn in none other. We have to learn. And we realize, boy, I really messed up there. And then you try to instill that on your children, and they have none of it because they were the ones that were raised that way. So they're like, no, but you did this and this and this. And you're saying, no, that's why we think they're crazy. Because we're like, Dad, you didn't do that to me.
Right. That's exactly right. My little sister, completely different than how we were raised. I mean, it's like my mom and dad keep getting leaner and leaner and leaner. They just understood, like you said, with wisdom. All right, so I was talking about you on my radio show because I got a text from you saying you were in Salt Lake City, Utah, and you got trapped in an elevator and the jaws of life had to let you out. And I was trying to explain that to my audience, and there are so many questions that people had that I couldn't answer. So can you just elaborate a little bit on your Seinfeld experience?
So we're wrapping up Saturday at noon. I get a call. It says Emily Lane, my daughter. So I'm pretty sure that means something's going on with labor. She says, I am sorry, Dad. My water broke. And I'm like, that's great. I'll get rolling. I go to James, who I'm with, who's I'm going to have next Tuesday. And I said, hey, buddy, I've got to go. I'm really sorry. My daughter's water broke. And he's like, you need to get out of here. But he said, do me a favor. Go next door where everyone's having lunch. There was a group of 20 of us. Tell everybody goodbye. So I get my stuff together, run down, go across the street to the other building, and I get in the elevator, and James gets in with me, and another fella, Dave from Britain, and then another gal, Hope from New York. And we start going up, and I'm rolling, I'm talking to him, I'm somewhat excited. I've got Southwest Airlines on hold because I'm trying to switch my flight. And we get going, and all of a sudden, there's a pretty large thud we hear, and then we dropped probably 4 to 6 inches. So that elevator was old anyway, but it was a little bit more visible of a drop, and then everything goes black.
Oh my, I would be flipping out.
And so I kept talking because I was on a roll. I mean, this was a speaking conference, and I was testing material out. And then I finally go, did our elevator stop? And they're like, I think so. So I'm pressing buttons, nothing goes on. And so I open up the loudspeaker where there's a little phone. Every elevator, I think, has this little phone, and I hit the button.
Yeah.
We call, and they're, who are you? Where are you at? Because it's Saturday. Nobody's there. We'll have somebody out there. And so over the course of about an hour, we had a few phone calls. The technician got lost. We had great stories. We talked because I always said, if you need material, now we have good material. You can always say, I was stuck in an elevator, and how can I relate this to life? But finally they show up and they're hitting something. It sounds like sledgehammers outside. And then finally they get something to pry the doors open, and we walk a little bit out to safety. We have to step up because I think we'd overshot the floor. And I decided to take the stairs down to the car to get to the airport. So
I was talking about this with my audience. I said, you know what? If that experience happens to me, first of all, I panic. We're going to run out of air. Like, there would be no conversations. I would go into a complete panic. I'd probably try to break the ceiling open, things that you've seen in movies. I imagine myself doing that. But then after that happened, if I got rescued, I would never get in another elevator, and I would take the stairs, even if it was the Empire State Building. I had to go to the top. I wouldn't get in one. I couldn't do it.
Well, nobody was claustrophobic. It was only a 3-story building. So I guess worst case scenario, you only fall 3 floors, but it was
worst case scenario, come crashing to the ground, please.
But nobody was really panicked. I think I panicked after about 45 minutes because Southwest had gone out of their way. And this is a little bit of a advertisement for. I've been on a lot of airlines, and I can tell you every time I've had to switch a flight, I don't care if anything happened. Most of them charge me.
Yeah.
Every time Southwest, if it's they're like, it's a $300 switch, but it's free for you. Just make sure you get to the 4:30 flight. So my only panic was, now I'm thinking, oh no, I'm not going to catch this flight. But it all worked great, and it was a great experience.
Okay, so you turned a negative into a positive. Okay, so coming up, we're going to give you our challenge for the week. But first, I want to run through a couple of really good stories that I came across this week. First one was a high school teacher got married. And when you get married, I don't know if you did this, but you get presents. And with those presents, you and your husband or you and your wife sit down at some point, and you guys start to go through the presents and write thank you notes and open up the presents and go, oh, look, we got another pan. How great is this pan? And then you write a note thanking people for whatever they gave you for a present. Well, there's a woman in Utah who got married. And instead of getting presents, she told everybody that was coming to the wedding, instead of getting us a present, use that money to donate to the homeless students that are in her school. Now, she had found out that at her school, they had 100 kids that went to that high school that were homeless. So instead of getting wedding presents, she got presents for all these homeless kids and things that they needed. I just thought, how incredible is that? I don't know. Did you guys we didn't get a lot of presents, but we got some, but I'd be willing to give those presents to other people if it would help them.
We got good presents. I remember just a funny story. We got married in Mesa, Arizona. I grew up in Flagstaff. And so we invited everybody in Flagstaff. I spent my whole 19 years there. And it was funny because a group of people that I had known my whole life had got together to pull their money together to buy us a present. What do you think a group of people would buy? I mean, you've grown up with them 19 years and you get probably 20 people to pull themselves together to get you a present. Just take a guess on what they got us.
A pool table, what everybody else wants.
They got us an ice cream maker. So I had to laugh going, that was very sweet and kind of them. But
ice cream, but talk about that. How great is homemade ice cream? It's better than any other ice cream there is. I love it.
So we turned a negative into a positive.
Into a positive, of course. You got to. Here's another story. Delphine Gibson is her name. She is the oldest person in America. She turned 114 years old. And they asked her, what's the secret for a long life? And she says it's her faith in God. I love that answer because you've seen some other people in their hundreds and they ask them the question. They talk about smoking and drinking their whole life. And they said that's the key to them living a long time. Well, this woman says her faith in God, and she's at the top. She's 114 years old, so congratulations.
That's awesome.
That is awesome. And then there's another cool story. I got two more stories, and these are all good news stories. They make you feel good and think about things. So there's a viral pic of this dad and his son, and the pic went up, and it went viral when he posted this pic because it's back to school time. So this dad in kindergarten first grade, walked his son to school in first grade. So they took a picture of him from behind walking his son to first grade. Well, years have gone by, and they just took a picture of the same dad, walking his son in the hallways to go to college for the first time. And they posted that picture. And I thought, oh my gosh, that is fantastic that this dad and this son have this bond. And I thought to myself, well, my son's starting college. Do you think he's going to let me walk him to class? And so I asked him, and he goes, no, Dad, get out. And so I didn't get a chance to walk my son to college. But I saw the picture that went viral, and I thought it's such a cool thing, being a dad and noticing that kind of thing. And here's the last story I'll leave you with. You and I are both sports fanatics. We're fans. Less than we used to be. We used to be really... Eric and I didn't talk for a while because the Lakers had beat the Sacramento Kings, and I was a huge Sacramento Kings fan. I lived there. I had Paige Vladi and Mike Bibby on my show all the time. And so Eric would fly up. I got us tickets to the game. We went to the Laker game against Sacramento. It just so happens we had great tickets, but all the people in my section were Laker fans, and Eric was high-fiving all the Laker fans and just ticking me off, right? So we love it. We play ping pong, football, any sport. Eric and I, we get into sports.
But you've got to tell them the backstory of why you didn't talk to me. I was at a family reunion in Northern California, and I can't remember what year it was. The Kings were probably better, but I know they had won.
It had to have been like 2002, 3, 4, or 5. One of those years.
They had won, I believe, game 1 in L.A.
Yeah.
And they were winning game 2 apparently by 20 at halftime. I had no reception for cell for like 4 days. Well,
that's right.
I get back into reception about 2 days after game 2, and when that's the Robert Horry famous shot that they won. They came back from 20.
Yeah.
The first few seconds I get into service, I have message after message, but one of them is about literally a 4-minute message of him telling me how I told you, and it's halftime of this game too. So he hasn't ever called me at halftime again. He always waits till the score is over.
The same thing happened to me at the Super Bowl. I had the Falcons, and they were up by 20 at halftime, and I was talking so much madness to the guys that were like Patriot fans. And then when that game ended, I got torn up. I didn't talk to anybody.
That's the only reason it was funny.
So let me get to the good story. The good story is this. Being a college athlete, think about this. If you don't have a scholarship, you're a walk-on. It's expensive. college is just expensive. There's a kicker who he goes to Bowling Green State University as a kicker. His freshman year, he had to try out, and then he got a partial scholarship. Second year, same thing, partial scholarship. So he still had some back pay. So his junior year, this happened a couple weeks ago. He was at practice, and the coach said to him, if you kick a 53-yard field goal right now and you hit it, I will give you a full ride for the next 2 years so you don't have to pay anything for college. Think about the pressure in life that we all get sometimes when, like, this is my moment. If I can just do this, things are going to be fantastic. If I miss this field goal, I'm going to have to pay loans, student loans, all these things go through your mind. And either you're clutch or you're not clutch. It either affects you or it doesn't affect you. And this guy, field goal kicker, his name is Jake Sutter, or Suter, S-U-D-E-R. You can look him up. He nailed that 53-yard field goal, and he gets the next 2 years of his college paid for. I love when people come through like that. It's fantastic. I love that story. All right, so let's talk about today. Let's talk about what's a good challenge for our podcast listeners right now. What's a good challenge for them this week, Dr. Eric?
So I'm going to make it simple, but I'm going to make it a little bit hard. If you want to transform your life, I was writing a chapter of a blog and a book the other day, and I'm trying to line out exactly how we want to get to where we want to get. And there are some key principles, I believe, or key foundations. For me, the most important commitment you make is when you get up in the morning. It is by far, it sets the stage for the rest of the day. Now, I'm not going to tell you what time to get up. I happen to think that 5 a.m. or 4:45. But what the challenge would be this week for everybody is keep the commitment you set the night before you go to bed. I don't know what time you're setting your alarm clock for, but if you're one of the 83% of the people across the United States, you hit that little bar on the top that snoozes and you get 7 minutes of rest, you believe. But in reality, you just lost 4 hours of your day mentally because your brain starts to go back into those other waves. Also, you just lied to yourself. You just said the night before, I'm getting up at this time, and you broke the first commitment of the day, and it becomes very easy for the day to spiral out of control. It's very easy to choose the wrong food because, I lied to myself this morning because I was going to get up at 5:30, and I got up at 5:37, 5:44, heck, 5:51 maybe. Sometimes it's a conditioned response. People think I need to get up at 6. I'm going to set the clock for 5:39 so I can get 3 snooze cycles. It is the worst thing you can do. Neuroscience, now psychology, as well as physiology shows us the detriment it has. And then carry it into the weekend. Don't change your weekend. Do not get up at 10 or 11 on Saturday or Sunday. You just screw the whole cycle up. It's a very difficult challenge, so I'm making it simple. I'm just saying get up at the time you decide you're going to get up the night before. I'll talk a little bit about next week on the follow-up about why it's important to get up early, but it will be one of the greatest commitments you make that will change many aspects of your life. Your commitments to yourself, your commitments to your family, to other people begin to happen because you can make that personal commitment. Stephen Covey called it the private victory. That's one of those private victories that we can never have public victories unless we're successful with private victories. So do that this week.
My alarm goes off at 4:15. I usually wake up before my alarm even goes off because I'm on these natural testosterone pellets that, I used to, I take a nap in the afternoon because I do a morning show. I get up at 4:15. I usually take a nap anywhere between noon and 3 o'clock. Sometimes my naps are 3 hours. Sometimes they're 2 hours. Lately, since I've been on this testosterone, that my naps are only an hour long now, and I'm getting a deeper sleep with, and my dreams are just, I can remember my dreams. That's the weirdest thing. But I never hit snooze. I always even if my alarm goes off, I hit it and I get up right away. I've noticed, even without you telling that, when I've hit snooze before, I would get groggy and drowsy. And you're right. The rest of the day, it just did not seem right. So, you're telling me about the science. I'm just talking about experience.
So make people just put it over there. Like you've got to get up physically out of bed to go get it. And I think we know why that softball incident happened now that you talked about your testosterone beads.
has nothing to do with that. It's making me actually happier, not meaner. And it's not steroids, Eric. This is made from a plant, a natural soy plant. You got to do your research.
Isn't that what Drew Barrymore's brother said in 50 First Dates when the guy kept saying it? He says it's not juice, it's protein shake.
How dare you compare me to the guy on 50 First
That was
Dates?
that was the guy from
That's Rudy.
Lord of the Rings. What's his name? Frodo's best friend.
Yeah, that's Rudy.
Rudy. He's been
Rudy.
That's what you keep.
All right.
It's not. It's a protein shake. It's not the juice. It's protein shake.
Oh my gosh, we love sports and movies. We can live on those. All right, that is all we have. That's all we have for you for this week. Coming up, though, we are going to have a great guest the next couple of days. So make sure you look at your podcast and your Facebook and YouTube channel for It's All Good. Until then, I guess we'll say see you later.